Hello, explorer. Tonight our pages flip to the Chupacabra, a vampiric alien-like monster of Mexico. I would love your support and a quick subscribe, but only if you're glad for the perspective you're about to receive from me. Feel free to comment what you might already know about tonight's topic and how you learned it. We're very glad to have you here. On to our Mexican folklore story. The land is a tapestry of browns and muted greens, an uneven quilt of dry hills, thorny brush, and the faint shimmer of heat that rises even as daylight fades. Along the edges of the dirt road, agave plants stand like soldiers with spears pointed towards the sky, their stiff leaves catching what little breeze wanders by. Travelers crossing this stretch know the quiet well. It's not true silence. There's always the rasp of cicadas, the shuffle of sand beneath sandals or boots, and the call of a crow too stubborn to leave its perch. But it is a quiet that clings like a weight, and most people walking here tend to speak in lower voices. In these parts, a journey is never rushed. A farmer leading a mule cart may pause to adjust a rope, or simply to wipe the sweat trickling down his neck, and there's always time to notice the smell of dust warming in the sun, or the sharp tang of mesquite smoke drifting from a cooking fire in a distant hut. By day, it feels honest and ordinary. By night, however, the tone shifts, and the stories that have always moved like whispers in the back of people's minds feel nearer. That's when the rumors arrive, carried by men walking home from the fields and women gathered at their cooking stones. A goat found dead by morning, not torn by coyotes, not mauled by stray dogs, but stiff with two small wounds along its neck. A chicken coop opened, not broken, yet emptied by something with purpose, much more purpose than hunger. The tails spread like warm smoke curling into every corner, because in villages where lives depend on animals for milk, meat, and trade, a dead goat is not only a crippling loss, but a terrible omen. The rumors are never loud. They slip through lips half closed, as though to speak too loudly might draw the very thing nearer. El Chupacabra, some say, letting the word hover, careful not to test it. The name means goat sucker, a creature said to drain livestock of blood and vanish before anyone can see it. Children hear it first as a caution, to stay close and not wander too far. But soon they begin to notice the way adults are glancing at one another, as if unsure whether to laugh or ask questions. Life in the region has always carried this blend of faith and practicality. Men walk the land with machetes at their hips, not only for clearing brush, but for keeping snakes at bay. Women keep herbs tied in small bundles above their doors, a mingling of protection and tradition. Faith is layered, Catholic prayers resting atop older rituals, drawn from indigenous roots, the way earth presses new layers over old stone. In the same way, stories of strange creatures are not dismissed outright. They sit beside the practical tasks of milking, grinding corn, and patching roofs. Travelers passing through the villages hear the change in tone when the subject comes up. Around a fire, men may begin with laughter, describing coyotes as if they were bold enough to wear masks and play tricks. But soon someone clears his throat and mentions the odd stillness of animals before dawn, the way the dogs are now barking at empty darkness, or how birds are vanishing from the trees without reason. Then the conversation seems to tighten up, and there's a weight in the air. Eyes shift to the surrounding fields, to the empty road, to the shadows beneath the trees. No one wants to admit fear, but everyone feels it. On the road, the land is not forgiving. Nights are cool but not gentle. The wind scrapes over stone, carrying grit into teeth and hair. A traveler has to pull their poncho closer around their soldiers or feel the wind blow through them. Coyotes howl, but that sound is familiar, almost reassuring. The worst feeling comes from the silence between, when something else seems to be moving but doesn't show itself. The land teaches the people here to trust their senses, to notice the faintest shifts. A goat refusing to graze, a mule snorting and pulling against its lead, or the sudden absence of frogs. Such signs are not dismissed. These are warnings given directly to the people if they're listening. As the stories of drained goats spreads, an unease settles on the villages. At night, smokes from hearths rise and conversations stretch longer, firelight drawing neighbors together while their eyes flick towards the dark edges beyond. A child may be told to finish her tortilla quickly, not because bedtime is pressing, but because the adults wish her safely behind closed doors before the moon climbs too high. Even the older men who scoff in daylight, insisting that wolves or thieves are to blame, find themselves stepping carefully at night, lanterns held high, as though the light itself could build a wall to keep them safe. The roads between villages are rarely empty. Someone is always walking, always carrying burdens of corn, firewood, or gossip. Yet the pace of these walks changes as rumors grow heavier. People move a little faster, step a little more firmly, as though the act of hurrying might discourage something from following. Even dogs walking alongside their masters seem less inclined to stray, their ears lifting at small noises in the brush. These are not moments of panic, but careful observation, born of generations of dogs who learned to survive not by denying danger, but by keeping an eye out for it and recognizing it early. Those who live closest to the land are always first to sense when something's amiss. Shepherds who spend nights under the stars notice when their flocks grow restless. Farmers who rise before dawn to water the fields find hoofprints that don't match their animals. Hunters who know every rustle of the brush grow uneasy when a silence deeper than usual stretches across the hills. Each one carries their piece of the puzzle back to the village. The land itself seems to play tricks in these times. The shape of a branch caught against the moon looks like a hunched figure watching. The rustle of agave leaves could almost be footsteps, and the faint shine of animal eyes in the distance might belong to a coyote, or perhaps something else. It's not just the blood-drained goats, but all these little signs mean that people can't help but imagine that the creature is here, prowling just beyond the reach of the lantern light. And so travelers crossing these dry hills carry not only food and water, but the weight of knowing that there might be something in this land they don't recognize. These rumors follow them like shadows, and every pause coming with a glance towards a rustling bush or a distant howl reminds them to start moving just that little bit quicker. Morning brings no relief from worry. The first light stretches across the scrubland, painting the hills in pale gold, but in the courtyards of small farms and ranchos, men gather with furrowed brows, staring at what the night has left behind. A goat lies stiff, its body oddly untouched, no torn flesh, no entrails scattered as with the work of coyotes. Instead, there are again 2 clean puncture marks along the neck, the skin darkened around them. A farmer kneels beside the animal, brushing flies away with his hat. His eyes trace the marks carefully. He's seen what dogs can do in a frenzy. He's watched vultures tear into weak calves. But this is different. Deliberate, precise marks. He presses a finger to the soil near the body, searching for tracks. There are some, but they're faint and confusing. 3-toed prints, but not like those of chickens. Too wide and deep, as though something heavier had stepped. The earth is dry, so details blur quickly, but enough remains to confuse him and stir his unease. Nearby, the chickens stir nervously in their coop. They're alive but restless, feathers puffed, pacing with sharp clucks. Other animals can sense it too. Dogs tied at the posts bark into the wind with their hackles raised, their eyes trained on nothing visible. The farmer straightens, dusts his trousers, and knows he won't forget the image of that goat for years to come. This is how the rumors spread. A shepherd finds 3 sheep dead at once, lined together as if deliberately, and each one bearing the same twin punctures. A boy chasing after his mule notices bloodless rabbits lying stiff in the grass, untouched by scavengers. Each discovery is carried back to the village in words whispered. The pattern grows, and with it, the sense that something is feeding. In Mexican countryside life, animals are more than property. They're companions, currency, and a form of security. A goat may mean milk for a child, cheese for the market, or trade for needed tools. A chicken's eggs might keep a family fed through lean weeks. When such animals vanish or die, the loss is personal. People mourn because in small homes where wealth is measured in feathers and hooves, each creature has weight and meaning and purpose. That's why these wounds are so closely inspected. Men carry their lanterns at night now, walking the edges of their fences with rifles or machetes in hand, though many know these weapons are useless against something that strikes without being seen. Still, it's better than standing unarmed before their fear. The dogs are now let loose, their barking echoing across the hillsides until it's difficult to tell if they're chasing something or chasing one another's noise. And yet, despite the clamor and the activity in the village, these killings continue. There is talk, of course, about what else it might be. Some blame outsiders, strangers walking through the land, perhaps strange thieves who kill animals and leave them behind out of cruelty. Others say that's silly and point to witches, brujas said to roam in the form of owls, draining life through spells. But when bodies show the same wounds again and again, doubt fades, replaced by the uncomfortable thought that perhaps those first whispers are true. The environment itself provides clues. A farmer checks the corral in early morning and finds a patch of soil damp where no rain has fallen, as if something had pressed down and released moisture from the ground. Another one notices the smell, sharp, almost metallic, carried on the breeze near where a sheep was killed. And others notice the silence, as if every little creature has agreed to retreat whenever this thing draws near. These subtle signals accumulate over time and lead the villagers to make decisions. Now in the evenings, men sit longer at their fields, some smoking thin cigars, others chewing at stalks of grass, but all of them have their eyes fixed on the distance where dusk gathers. They know that land like this has always demanded their vigilance. The same care used to spot rattlesnakes among the rocks, or to judge when a storm will sweep across the plateau, is now applied to this new danger. What unsettles people most is the precision. A coyote is sloppy, tearing and scattering, leaving half-consumed bodies behind. A snake strikes and swallows, or else retreats. But this purposeful puncturing, it's like it's choosing how it wants to eat. The drained goats are not only dead, they're reduced and hollowed. By now the evidence lies not just in the bodies, but in the rhythm of the villages. Children are kept indoors after sunset, warned not to chase each other near the cactus rows. Men take to carrying their blades even when walking a short distance only. And fires are tended higher, smoke sent high up into the sky. Neighbors glance at one another with tight expressions when another animal is found, and though no one admits it aloud, each family wonders just how long before their own corral is struck. And so as the signs continue to build, even the skeptics fall quiet. The creature leaves its calling card in every punctured neck and emptied carcass, and so each person has decided on their own, and eventually it shows in the community. They know this thing is here now. There's no denying it with rumors or other explanations anymore. By the time dusk falls the next day, the village courtyard has become its own kind of gathering place, a patch of hard-packed earth ringed by low stone walls, where benches and crates are pulled together as neighbors collect with baskets of food, their hands busy and their voices low. Smoke from nearby cooking fires drifts into the air, carrying the smell of corn dough frying in lard, the smell of roasted chilies, and the sweet heaviness of atole thickened with piloncillo. The warmth of shared food and flickering light contrasts with the stories being told, because no meal can mask the tension in the air. It begins cautiously. Someone mentions a goat was found again drained at the edge of a riverbed. Another recalls the sound of dogs barking themselves hoarse into the night, only to fall silent all at once. No one wishes to exaggerate, village people are especially practical, but as each detail is added, the unease grows. A woman stirs a pot beside her and remarks that her chickens have stopped laying eggs. A boy seated at his grandfather's knee adds that he saw glowing eyes just beyond the mesquite, though the men hush him quickly, not wanting to lend too much truth to a child's fright. In villages like these, conversation at twilight is as much a tradition as grinding maize or ringing church bells. Stories are exchanged not only to entertain, but to remind and pass warnings. Tonight, however, the stories tilt between the present and the past. Older men lean forward, their voices gravelly as they speak of earlier days when other strange things moved through the countryside. Owls that carried curses, or monstrous bats that were said to drink from cattle long before anyone called them Chupacabra. The younger ones listen intently, some skeptical and others wide eyed. They know these elders are not merely telling fables, for in the rhythms of rural life, memory and experience are blurred together. What was seen years ago is as real as what was seen last night, for both shape how people act when darkness deepens. A grandmother with her hair bound in a long braid recalls how her own mother would sprinkle salt at thresholds to keep away night demons, a practice rarely done now, but spoken of with renewed seriousness. Around the fire, Catholic prayers enter the conversation too. Someone mentions Someone mentions that the priest has been asked to bless the fields and sprinkle holy water on the corrals, so that even if the creature does come, it might hesitate at the sign of the cross. Others nod, though with caution. Others nod with caution because they know prayers have always worked best when joined with practical defenses, better fences, sharper machetes, and more watchful eyes. In Mexican villages, faith is not a replacement for effort, but a companion to it. And when fear looms, both rosaries and ropes are clutched tighter. Even so, tension sharpens when stories turn to those who claim to have glimpsed the creature itself. A man who had been walking home late from the fields insists he saw a hunched figure dart across the road, moving faster than any coyote could. He says its eyes reflected green in the lamplight, and its posture and limbs looked wrong and disjointed. Another woman adds that her cousin's hens were not only dead but lined in a row, and she swears she heard a hiss in the night like air escaping from a gourd. The courtyard grows quieter with each retelling, because when the accounts echo one another, even the skeptical find fewer words to dismiss them. The children shift uneasily, their bowls forgotten. Some clutch the hems of their mother's skirts, while others lean forward to catch every word. For them, this is both terror and an initiation, a moment when the world's edges grow larger and they're allowed to step into it. The adults notice but now allow it, for listening to these stories is a form of teaching. Still, a quiet undercurrent of defiance flows through the courtyard. The villagers are not surrendering to this dread. They now start trading ideas about doubling the watch, setting lanterns at the four corners of the village, or keeping coals glowing through the night so no corral stands in darkness. A carpenter speaks of sharpening some stakes. Another man suggests spreading lime near the coops to better reveal footprints by morning. Each contribution is small, but the act of speaking them aloud provides a measure of control. The courtyard atmosphere becomes one of both fear and resilience. A woman ladles steaming pozole into bowls, the rich broth thick with hominy and pork, and as neighbors eat, the conversation softens slightly. And so the community survives not by silencing their fear, but by sharing it in a warmth. Even as the creature's name is whispered, life insists on asserting itself with the flicker of laughter at small jokes. Someone teases the boy who swore he saw glowing eyes, suggesting perhaps it was only his uncle's mule. But when the bowls are emptied and the fire burns low, eyes turn again to the dark beyond the courtyard walls. The flickering lamplight doesn't reach far, and in that unseen space, imaginations run wild. People rise slowly, carrying their benches back, collecting baskets and empty bowls, and each family retreats to the safety of their home. The doors are latched with great care, and shutters are closed tight. The courtyard falls silent, but the memory of the evening's words linger. The stories have done their work. The Chupacabra is no longer just a rumor passing along their dusty roads. It's taken shape in the minds of the villagers, and they now know that this is a reality with which they must contend. Preparations begin long before the moon climbs over the jagged ridges of the hills the next night, for in villages such as these, survival is measured not just in the crops or the animals, but how well one remembers the old protections. As the words of these strange killings spread, the elders take center place in guiding what must be done. Inside homes made of adobe and stone, Herbs are gathered in bundles, dried leaves stripped from stalks and tied with twine. Rosemary is common, grown in small patches by the doorsteps, and its pungent scent is believed to drive away evil, the smoke burning sharply in the nose. Rue is mixed in too, bitter and strong, said to confuse creatures of darkness that thrive on scent. Women hang these bundles above doors and near windows, letting their fragrance drift through the night air. The belief is simple, that the land's plants carry strength, and when this essence is released in smoke, it becomes a shield. Prayers, of course, are part of the acts. Mothers dip their fingers in holy water kept in small bottles brought back from the church, tracing the sign of the cross over their children's foreheads and over the beams of their corrals. Rosaries are left dangling from nails near animal pens, the beads darkened with age and use. But there are other preparations that slip into the evening. Some families scatter salt in neat lines before their doorways, a practice whispered from indigenous routes. A handful of men carry small obsidian blades inherited from their grandfathers. Others prepare charms fashioned from animal bones, smoothed by hand and tied with red thread. The children watch these acts with a mixture of fear and fascination. They're told to help, if only by carrying sprigs of herbs or gathering wood for the fires. And though some of the children fidget or glance nervously at the shadows, they do what they're told, because in the rhythm of such traditions, fear can be steadied and controlled. As dusk begins to fall into night, the glow of torches begins to punctuate the darkness. Men are sharpening machetes on whetstones, the rasping sound carrying through the evening air. Dogs are untied and allowed to roam again, though their nervous pacing suggests they sense far more than the people. A boy tethers his family's donkey close to the house, whispering words of reassurance. And as though the animal might understand, they believe that perhaps it does once it leans its head against him before pulling at the hay. The courtyard where neighbors had gathered the night before is now transformed into a preparation place. Small fires burn steadily, smoke carrying the pungent scent of herbs. A few men pour out mezcal into the dust as an offering, the sharp liquor evaporating quickly in the dry earth. Others carve crosses into wooden stakes, setting them upright in the soil near the perimeters of their homes. Other women prepare bowls of chili water, its bright sting meant to deter whatever might creep too close. As the night air thickens with the combination of the villagers' actions, it's not just silence that follows, but watchfulness, as though every creak of a wooden beam or shuffle of hooves is amplified. Lamps are lit in more homes than usual, their dim glow spilling onto the streets. From a distance, it would look like a constellation brought down to earth. But beneath these preparations lies a shared understanding. This is not guaranteed safety. The Chupacabra is not described as easily frightened. It's cunning, and it waits for the right moment to strike. As the hours slip by, families huddle closer, the smell of warm tortillas drifting from clay stoves, mixing with the acrid sting of smoke. Mothers hum softly to restless children, their lullabies steady and low. Fathers and sons stand in courtyards leaning on machetes, eyes scanning the horizon. Each household waits, every ear tuned to the smallest sound, to try and catch what's hiding in the darkness. The hours of waiting drag on through the night, and though the village is armed and ready, tension lingers sharp as cactus thorns. The air grows cooler, the smell of smoke is now settling low over the corrals, and every rustle of mesquite branches sets the nerves on edge. At first the sounds seem ordinary, but as the moon reaches its highest, a silence falls so complete that it presses against them. The sound of dogs pacing and owls calling seems to disappear. Crickets stop mid-chirp, and frogs quit their bleating. Silence in the countryside is rarely pure. It's often a prelude that the animals sense something terrible is about to happen. At the far edge of a cornfield, where stalks rise like little spears, 2 points of light flicker in the lamplight. They're too steady to belong to fireflies, too high for a dog, and too unblinking for a person. The men keeping watch over this field stiffen, their machetes shifting in their grips as their hands tighten. A boy whispers to his father, but the man hushes him quickly, eyes locked on the glow. The points vanish, reappear a few steps over, then vanish again. Soon other reports ripple across the homes. A shepherd near the western edge claims he saw something dart across the dry riverbed, too fast for his eyes to follow. Another swears he heard a hiss beneath the donkey's bray. The dogs bark wildly, but not in pursuit. They're nervous and circling, tails tucked, their voices pitched with fear. For all their ferocity against coyotes or thieves, they seem deeply unwilling to chase what waits outside the glow of the torches. The villagers lean into the darkness and look with their eyes squinted. The smell of dust rises sharply, mingled with a faint metallic tang. A sudden gust sends the herbs above the door spinning on their twine. Mothers are tightening shawls around their children, pulling them closer to hearths, while the men murmur prayers under their breath, a mix of Hail Marys and old invocations from their grandparents. The first true glimpse comes when a farmer's lantern catches movement. Between the stalks of corn, he can make out the shape now, an unnatural and lean outline. Too tall for a dog, too angled for a man. It shifts as though its spine arches upward unnaturally. Its skin appears dull, mottled against the pale dirt, the color indistinct but wrong for any known creature. And then the eyes, bright and reflective, but now fixed on the humans with a patience that chills. For a moment, no one breathes, the image searing into memory. It doesn't charge, it just waits. And that waiting gnaws deeper into the nerves of those who watch. A torch flame sputters, and in that flicker, the creature is gone. Shouts rise, men rush to the edge with their lanterns held high, machetes swinging into the shadows, but nothing's found. The soil bears faint impressions, clawed and oddly shaped, three-toed and deeply pressed. The prints lead into the brush and then vanish abruptly. This pattern repeats multiple times throughout the night. The glow of eyes appears and disappears at different corners of the village, sometimes close enough that a dog runs to cower behind its master. Once, a goat lets out a bleating scream, high and desperate, before falling silent. By the time the men reach it, the animal is collapsed against the corral, neck marked by those telltale puncture wounds. The speed of the act leaves no question. The creature struck, fed, and vanished in the time it takes to draw a single breath. By now, the villagers are terrified, but they can't run. Fires are stoked higher, prayers are said louder, and the machetes are clenched tighter. Children are shushed when they whimper, soothed by mothers whose own fear is carefully hidden. A few men venture further out into the brush with torches held aloft or lanterns swinging, but each time they return empty-handed. When the pale light of dawn finally creeps over the hills, the village exhales the breath they didn't know they were holding. The fires have dropped low, the herbs are hanging brittle and blackened, and the corrals stand with both survivors and losses. Another goat is gone. A chicken is stiff near its coop, but the people remain exhausted but intact. For the first time, the Chupacabra is not rumor or trace. It's been seen and it was experienced. And though they might be terrified, to know that it is a real, tangible thing drives their next course of action. The decision to hunt it is not taken lightly. In the village, people know well enough that a creature clever enough to drain goats without leaving a drop is not one that will fall easily to basic traps. But the necessity of it leaves little room for hesitation or alternative planning. Each dead animal means less milk, fewer eggs, and fewer coins to barter with at the market. If they don't stop the Chupacabra now, the village will starve. And so, by the second night after they saw its eyes, men begin to gather in earnest, machetes slung over their shoulders and rifles in hand. Their dogs are on short leashes, and the air is thick with the scent of smoke and herbs again. Hunting in this landscape means braving the wilderness as it is, thorn and dust. The men dress in sturdy sandals or worn boots, their legs wrapped in cloth to guard against spines of prickly pear. The hunt began at dusk as the sun was sinking low. They fanned out in groups of 4 so each man could take a general direction with his eyes, and they moved through cornfields and dry riverbeds, each man making sure to also keep another one within sight. The land swallows light quickly, forcing them to rely on the lanterns they brought. Every rustle of brush makes their hearts lurch. A hare darts past, and one man nearly swings his machete before realizing what it was. A barn owl bursts from a cactus, its wings clapping the air. The brush is resisting their movements, mesquite branches are clawing at their arms and legs, and the dust, stirred by their boots, clings to their skin and mouth and lips with a bitter taste. Somewhere a coyote's howling, but the men pay it no mind and instead focus on the silence afterwards to see if they can still hear the rest of nature. Their steps are growing slower and more careful as they press into darker and darker corners. It's here that they find the first signs. Near the edge of a dry arroyo, one of the dogs stops dead, teeth bared, with a growl rising low in its throat. Lanterns swing, and the men see prints pressed into the dust, the same three-toed claws. They follow the trail, heavy with their steps, until it disappears against a patch of stone. The dog whines now, tugging against the rope, and it's clear it's terrified. Further on, near the prickly pear thickets, a smell lingers, the same metallic smell and tang of last night. One man swears he hears a hiss, soft but close. They stop, blades ready, lanterns lifted high. The dogs are barking wildly now, lunging against their ropes. The men exchange glances, each understanding without words that something is near enough to cause the dogs to lose their minds. Hours pass and the hunt turns into something between pursuit and ritual. They whisper prayers as they walk, hoping that that's enough to drive the creature away. Some recite Catholic litanies, others mutter the old invocations. They pass an abandoned jacal, its roof collapsed, its walls half swallowed by mesquite trees. Here the air feels colder, and one of the men swears he sees a shadow dart inside. They raise their lanterns high and search through the ruins, but they find nothing except lizards and cobwebs. They look at each other and realize that each man's nerves are frayed, and it's time to return and regroup. By midnight, they're at the dry riverbed. Their faces are tight with fatigue, and sweat is piled heavy on their brows. They found more prints and more signs, but no actual sighting of the creature tonight. Still, it's not as if the hunt was an entire failure. They found tracks and patterns, and they know the places the Chupacabra stalks regularly. They take out a map and start crossing off areas where they've seen these prints, and they analyze to see if they can figure out a pattern. When they're done, they begin walking back to the village, where the women wait at the gates, shawls pulled tight and eyes wide with questions. The men shake their heads but hold them up high. Though they may not have found and beaten the creature yet, they've made progress. Tomorrow the hunt will continue, perhaps with new strategies and new directions. For now they know they've stepped into the thorn and dust and returned strong and ready for more. They plan the next confrontation with a care that feels like prayer. By late afternoon, men reinforce corral posts, while boys string wire and hang makeshift bells made from bottle caps to give warning. Women braid rosemary and rue together. Near the gate, a curandero takes his place. He's the community's healer, part herbalist and part spiritual guide. In his hands he carries a clay saumerio, an incense burner used to release the fragrant smoke of copal resin, said to cleanse the air and create a barrier that protects against evil. The preparations are moving along smoothly. Lamps are placed at the corners of the corral with fresh candles. Fresh bowls of chili water have been prepared for anyone unlucky enough to be near the creature, but lucky enough to see it. A shallow pit has been dug across the path where tracks appeared the night before, and into it a man plants an obsidian knife. It's more symbolic than anything, but it makes everyone feel a lot safer, and like they've prepared their village adequately. When the darkness falls fully, the land offers its familiar warning. The crickets halt, the frogs hush, and the air gets heavy. The goat set as bait shifts nervously, and the bottle cap bells give a faint accidental ting. And then the smell arrives, metallic and sharp, but quickly now. Men glance one another, and each knows what follows. 2 green points appear at the edge of the fence. Its eyes again, steady and unblinking. A cloud slides off the moon, and the body takes shape around the outline. A lean form crouched low, with strange spines rising along its back like cactus thorns. The limbs are stretched too long and disjointed, looking dislocated. Its head juts forward as it tests the air, and its forked tongue slithers out to taste it. It moves not like a beast, but like a thief with clear intent. The goat cries out with the bells and clanging. The creature darts, blurring between shadows, and lands inside the corral without any effort. One man with excellent reflexes lunges first, hurling a bowl of chili water. It splashes across the flank, and the air fills with the reek of roasted peppers, and the creature recoils, hissing in pain. its back ridge flaring upright. The dogs are going mad now, straining against their muzzles. One breaks free and charges, brave but foolish. The creature pivots, a forelimb snapping out in a quick strike, and the dog tumbles, yelping, before limping back towards a house. The men surge forward now, machetes in hand, blades flashing under the light. The shallow pit is doing its work. The creature stumbles on the soft earth only for a heartbeat, and in that moment the obsidian knife gleams in the light. The man who placed it there kneels and presses his palm flat on the earth beside it, and he steadily but quickly recites a prayer that his grandfather taught him. For that brief moment in time, the thing's steps falter, and its movement is caught as its spirit is torn by the prayer. The musket roars, smoke fills the corral as a bang echoes through the air. When it clears, the creature is already leaping sideways, wounded but cunning enough to know it must escape now. Machetes slash, and one finds one of the spine ridges and tears loose a strip of hardened flesh that lands in the dust. The sound is sickening, but it's proof. The curandero raises his incense burner, swinging arcs of sweet copal smoke. The village believes this resin isn't just driving the creature away, but keeping them safe. This emboldens them, and they continue to charge. The creature's hesitating now, crouching lower and calculating. The goat presses its head against a post, the bells trembling above it. Another bowl of chili water arcs through the air. Salt scatters on the ground, white under the torchlight. The creature tests it with its paws, then slides sideways to avoid it. But as it does, a machete swings upwards, catching its ridge and shearing away another shard. The scream it gives has a sound so shrill and high they'd think it was a broken whistle, rattling in their skull. Then with one leap it clears the fence and vanishes into the brush. Lanterns and torches sway as men slash at empty air and run forwards. But it's gone. What remains is the spine shard smoldering, the gold trembling but alive, and men with sweat streaming down their backs, cold. The forearm of one is cut but bound quickly with cloth. The curanderio walks the corral, spreading incense smoke along the fence, murmuring prayers the whole time. The people don't celebrate yet. Pride belongs to certain victories. What they feel is a sheer sense of relief knowing they were able to actually drive the creature away. They continue their strict watch for the remaining hours of the night. Dawn arrives like a slow exhale, stretching its pale light across the hills. The villagers smell of smoke and sweat and herbs burned down. The goat is alive but skittish, refusing to graze even when freed from its rope, instead bumping fence posts and running in circles as though expecting danger to leap again. The men walk stiffly, sore muscles and machetes resting against them, their faces pale from fatigue, but glad for what they did. No one forgets the sight of the glowing eyes, nor the scream that rattled their skulls, or the sound of the spine being torn from its flesh as one lucky strike took it. That shard of spine now rests in the ashes of the saumerio. The curandero tends it, careful not to touch it with bare hands, prodding with a long stick instead. These remains are not a trophy. This is a burden. A piece of the creature is not something to keep, but something to cleanse. The healer burns it among copal resin and rosemary sprigs, letting the fragrant smoke spiral skywards. People gather in quiet circles, watching as the shards blacken and soften, finally collapsing into fragments that hiss faintly in the coals. Children are forced to be close to their parents this morning. Their mothers trace the sign of the cross on their foreheads with water fetched from the church font. One grandmother scatters fresh salt across doorways again. These acts don't erase the fear, but they help the villagers slowly return to a sense of control. The men compare their wounds and their observations. The one with the cut forearm rests under a shawl, sipping atole thick with cinnamon, the warmth easing the tremors in his hand. His compatriots around him patting his back and thanking him for his bravery. But still, the sense of victory doesn't come over them. They wounded it, but the hills stretch wide, and the thing is still out there. It may strike another corral, or even another village far away. The people know the land too well to pretend the danger is suddenly gone. They live with droughts and floods year-round, with pests that devour crops overnight. Why should the Chupacabra disappear suddenly when nothing else does? With that in mind, in the aftermath, they become closer than ever as a community. Fences are rebuilt higher, posts sunk deeper into the earth. Salt is bought in larger sacks from the next town over. Lanterns are repaired and have their candles replaced, and each family, whether or not their animals were touched, make their own preparations. Rosaries hanging by corral gates and new herbs tied at the windows, machetes sharp and ready. By the time night falls, the children are exhausted from being kept near their parents and fall asleep to lullabies hummed softly, their mothers rocking them, while keeping ears trained for the silence outside. The dogs, who are worn out from the hunt, curl under benches and twitch in uneasy sleep. The men try to stay awake a little bit longer, staring to the embers of their fires, remembering the moment when the machete struck spine and smoke curled around a wounded beast. They're not any less cautious, but they're relieved to know that the creature can be hurt. And so in the mornings, the villagers walk their lands with sharper eyes, noticing any prints in the soil and listening for changes in the chorus of insects, keeping their animals closer. The Chupacabra doesn't strike again, but in the evenings they share food and stories in the courtyard, mentioning what else they've seen and whether they see it more or less. The Chupacabra hasn't taken the village, but the village hasn't destroyed it either. What remains is an uneasy balance, a kind of act of watching and waiting, ready for whenever it might strike again. Except this time they are prepared, and they no longer fear the unknown, for they've made it known. Thank you for joining us in this tale of a town that turned its fear into determination to protect their innocent livestock. Our next story will cover the common lifestyle of Mexican ranchers and the livestock themselves and what roles it served in the community. The land waits beneath the early light, a patchwork of soil cracked from yesterday's heat, the dark green of milpa fields where maize pushes upwards, and the spines of cactus lining the boundaries like a natural fence. A rooster crows somewhere beyond the adobe walls, its voice cutting sharply through the cool dawn air. Farmers rise with the light, their hands rough with calluses and lined like dry creek beds. They reach for tools that lean against doorways, hoes, machetes, and shovels polished smooth by years of use. The smell of earth greets them immediately, damp where water has been poured on at dawn, dry and dusty everywhere else. The morning begins with the movement of a man pulling on his straw hat, the woven fibers darkened with sweat stains that no soap will erase. His wife ties a rebozo around her shoulders, carrying a basket of tortillas wrapped in cloth to keep them warm. The children trail behind, some clutching gourds of water, others chasing chickens that scatter noisily across the courtyard. Life here has no separation between work and family. Even the smallest children know the routine. First you fetch water, then you scare birds from the corn, and then you carry feed to the animals. The fields are not vast estates, but small parcels carved into the hills, where maize grows in tight lines beside beans and squash. This triad, the milpa, is the heart of survival, a system inherited from ancestors who learned that maize climbs tall and straight, beans twist upwards, and squash sprawls wide, shading the roots from drying sun. Farmers tend them with patient rhythm, blades striking at weeds, and feet pressing into soil that cracks when the rain comes late. The sound is steady, the metal of their machete against the earth, with their breath rising and falling, with an occasional muttered prayer asking for clouds. Beyond the fields, the courtyard hums with life. Chickens scratch at the dust, searching for kernels missed during threshing. Dogs sprawl in the shade of clay ovens, one eye always open towards the gate. Burros shift restlessly against their ropes, stamping hooves in protest of flies. The animals are not background, but in fact centerpieces in the rhythm of farming life. Companions, protectors, workers, and in the harder seasons, food. The relationship is practical, but not without affection. A farmer pats his burro's neck as he tightens its pack saddle. Meals are prepared before the day grows harsh. Women grind maize on the metate, the rhythmic scrape of stone against stone echoing like a heartbeat. The masa is pressed into thick tortillas, some cooked directly on the comal until they blister and blacken at the edges. The air fills with the smell of roasted maize, smoke curling upwards from mesquite embers. A pot of beans simmers nearby, flavored with epazote leaves plucked fresh from the garden. Their pungent aroma is believed to ease the stomach. A ladle of chili sauce waits beside it, deeply red and sharp, bright enough to chase away the blandness of the simplest meal. Eating together is as much necessity as comfort, fuel for the work ahead, but also a moment for the family to connect with each other. The rhythm of the seasons shapes everything. When the rains arrive, the soil softens and hope returns, each drop a promise that the maize will grow tall and the animals will fatten. When the rains delay, eyes turn upward with worry, and processions are sometimes held, villagers walking with saint statues lifted high, prayers blending with drums and incense to remind the skies of their duty. Farmers know droughts, floods, and pests, and though these trials are explained in practical terms, they're also seen as tests from forces greater than themselves. Evenings, when the heat finally breaks, offer a softer tone. The farmers return home, their clothes streaked with dust and their sandals worn thin. They pass neighbors along the path, exchanging brief greetings, sometimes trading a few eggs for a bundle of firewood, or a measure of milk for more chili peppers. Community here is woven as tightly as the rebozas women wear. No one survives by being alone. Children's laughter returns to the courtyards at the end of the day, and goats bleat impatiently for milking. Through it all, the animals remain constant companions. Their noises punctuate the silence of the hills. Their care shapes the daily schedule. A farmer wakes because the rooster insists. He pauses his work to untangle a goat's tether, and he delays rest until the last feeding is done. These creatures are both responsibility of his and a reassurance to him, living reminders that work yields something tangible, whether eggs warm from the nest, milk frothing in a clay jar, or a burro waiting patiently to haul tomorrow's harvest to market. At night the farm quiets but never completely stops. Dogs bark in warning at passing shadows, and cattle shift in their corrals with deep sighing breaths. The stars stretch fast and sharp overhead, but even then, the land lingers with its demands. Tomorrow the cycle begins again, sweat to soil, and the life bound tightly to animals and earth being slowly pulled out. The farmers sleep knowing that while they can't control the rains or the whims of fortune, they can place faith in their own labor. Goats make their presence known before dawn, their sharp bleats carrying across the courtyard like insistent alarms. They tug impatiently at their tethers, hooves striking the ground, ears flicking against flies. For Mexican farmers, goats are more than background noise. They're a livelihood, a source of milk, cheese, meat, and trade. Their restless, stubborn nature means they require constant watching, yet their gifts are too vital to ignore. A family with 3 or 4 goats has the reassurance of milk each morning, poured into clay mugs or stirred into atole. The milk can also be curdled into soft cheeses, fresh and crumbly, then wrapped in corn husks and carried to market. Tending goats is not glamorous. They're creatures of appetite and mischief, quick to nose into gardens, chewing tender maize shoots, or by climbing stone fences with improbable agility. Children are often tasked with herding them, walking barefoot across the hills with a stick in hand, shouting, whistling, or tossing pebbles to keep them in line. They learn patience, quick reflexes, and the sharp truth that animals do not always obey, and you have to exercise your will in order to get what you need done. Yet behind all this lies a reverence that the goats are tied into their culture and their survival. Among many families, a goat is butchered only for special occasions, weddings, baptisms, or saints' days when the whole village gathers to feasts. The meat is marinated in chili, garlic, and vinegar, then roasted slowly in pits dug into the earth, the aroma drifting for hours until neighbors wander by, lured by the promise of birria. Sharing goat meat is a mark of prosperity, proof that the host has enough to feed not only family, but some of the wider community. Even in poorer households, when a goat is sacrificed, every part is used. Aside from the meat, you use bones for broth, hides for rope or drum skins. Goats are woven into the beliefs as well. Some farmers speak of their uncanny eyes, the horizontal pupils that seem to peer sideways into secrets. Children are warned not to mistreat them, for stories say goats remember and may withhold their milk from cruel hands. In some parts of rural Mexico, goats are linked with fertility of both land and household, their milk seen as a gift that nourishes not only bodies, but fortunes. A grandmother might sprinkle a few drops of fresh milk at the threshold as an offering. Practicality, however, drives much of their care. Goats are, after all, hardy animals, able to survive where cattle would weaken. They graze on scrub and thorny brush. They climb rocky slopes with ease. This makes them perfect for the arid hillsides of central and northern Mexico, where rains come late and grass thins quickly. A farmer leading his goats along a dry riverbed knows that each mouthful of cactus pads or mesquite leaves is a meal no cow could stomach. The milking is also done at dawn, with women on low stools beside the corrals, clay jars at the ready. They first call the goats by name, coaxing them into stillness with soft words. Their hands work rhythmically, pulling and twisting, the sound of milk striking the jar echoing gently in the quiet. Children watch, learning both technique and more patience, for goats kick when startled. The milk is then strained through cloth, carried inside, and set on the table with steaming tortillas fresh off the comal. At the marketplace, goat produce defines part of the local economy. Wheels of fresh cheese are displayed in woven baskets, their surfaces dusted with salt to preserve them. Some families sell caeta, a caramel made from goat milk boiled slowly with sugar and cinnamon until it thickens into a rich, sticky sweetness spooned into smaller clay jars. This treat is usually sold in bigger towns or cities and ties small villages to wider trade routes, a reminder that even stubborn goats feed entire economies. The bond between farmers and their goats is one of constant negotiation. A farmer may grumble while chasing a runaway, but at night he pats its flank and ties the knot carefully, knowing that tomorrow the goat will provide again. Even the folklore of Mexico reflects this connection to goats. Some stories claim that witches, when traveling at night, preferred to disguise themselves as goats, creatures that are familiar enough to go unnoticed. Children listening to such tales learn that goats are not just animals, but symbols, standing at the line between everyday life and mystery. As evening settles, the goats return from the hills, their bleats carrying across the landscape. Dust clings to their coats, and burrs catch in their fur, but their bellies are full, and they're happy. Children herd them back into corrals, tying knots tight and scattering more feed. The smell of hay, dung, and warm animals fills the courtyard, mingling with the smoke of tortillas. The day closes with the same noisy chorus that began it, goats demanding attention even as farmers rest. The courtyard of a Mexican farmhouse is rarely quiet, and much of that noise comes from chickens. Their scratching feet, their clucking chatter, and the triumphant crow of roosters form a soundtrack to daily life, carrying through the adobe walls and over the stone fences. After the first light of tomorrow's dawn, hens will emerge from wooden coops, feathers fluffed against the cool morning. They'll scatter across the packed earth, pecking at crumbs of maize meal tossed from clay bowls, or chasing insects that dart from the shadows. Children laugh as they scatter the feed, though they know the work is practical as much as fun. Each hen means eggs, boiled for breakfast, cracked into masa for cakes, or sold at market in woven baskets lined with straw. The egg is a small treasure, fragile but daily, proof that the household will eat tomorrow as it did today. Roosters, of course, are both guardians and nuisances. Their crowing begins before the horizon even warms, and though farmers roll their eyes at the early alarm, they trust it too. In Mexican folk belief, the crow of the rooster can scatter the unseen, chasing away witches said to travel in owl form, or reminding restless souls that daylight approaches. The hens, for their part, weave themselves into rituals of nourishment and belief. When a child is sickly, a broth is prepared from chicken meat simmered with garlic, onion, and herbs, a cure not only for the body but for the spirit, since the bird is thought to give part of its vitality through its flesh. Eggs, too, have some protective uses. Curanderos sometimes pass an uncracked egg over a person's body to draw out malaire, and then break it into a glass of water, reading the shapes as signs of illness or relief. Chickens require little pasture compared to larger animals, which is why they thrive in nearly every household. They wander freely, their sharp eyes finding food where people see only dust. But their smallness makes them vulnerable. Hawks wheel overhead, waiting for the chance to swoop and grab themselves a fat meal. Foxes or feral dogs prowl at night, testing the wood of coops. Farmers reinforce enclosures with whatever they have: woven reeds, rough boards, or thorny branches stacked as barriers. And in the evenings, the clatter of hens being herded into safety echoes through the courtyards. Market days highlight the value of chickens. Women carry baskets balanced on their hips. Sometimes whole chickens are sold, their feet tied gently and wings tucked close, destined for a festival meal or a neighbor's growing flock. Feeding chickens often involves scraps from the kitchen, and this cycle of waste fed to the nourishment reinforces their role as thrifty animals. Leftover tortilla scraps, crushed chili seeds, or maize husks all find their way into the courtyard, eagerly pecked up and transformed into eggs by morning. Children in these homes form early attachments to chickens, chasing them, naming them, sometimes trying to cradle a hen until it bursts free with a flurry of wings. These games teach lessons in gentleness and respect, because a frightened hen will stop laying eggs. A girl scolded for rough handling will remember the importance of patience with every animal. And the chickens themselves also display personalities that obviously draw the children to them. Some hens are docile, letting themselves be caught easily, while others dart away like mischievous thieves. Roosters strut with arrogance, sparring in brief, noisy clashes that send feathers flying until one backs down. Farmers watch with some amusement, though they are cautious too, for a rooster's spurs can leave sharp scratches that might kill another. In the folklore, witches might also disguise themselves as black hens to cluck softly until a child follows. Others say that a white rooster crowing at midnight foretells change, sometimes fortune, sometimes death. Evening draws them back into the safety of the coops. The wooden doors shut fast, and the dogs settle close by. The courtyard quiets, save for the low clucks as hens settle on their perches, feathers rustling as they tuck heads beneath wings. Every farmer glances back one more time before heading inside, reassured by the steady sounds of roosting birds and the low growls of their dogs as they sleep. Cattle carry a different weight in the life of Mexican farmers, though. Where goats and chickens bring daily milk and eggs, cattle are wealth embodied in muscle, hide, and horn. A cow standing in the corral is not just an animal, it's a measure of security, a sign of status, and sometimes a family's entire fortune on four legs. Farmers start the morning by leading cows to water troughs filled by buckets hauled from wells, while their children scatter feed, usually a mixture of plant scraps from the last harvest. Farmers know each animal by its temperament. One cow might be docile and slow, another might be quick to flick its horns. Cows provide milk, yes, but their scale makes the gift heavier. A single cow's milk can be shared among families or sold in town, ladled into clay pitchers and covered with palm leaves for the journey. Women turn part of it into queso fresco, salted lightly and pressed into rounds, eaten within days while still soft. Some families make asadero cheese, stretched and folded until it becomes pliable, perfect for melting into quesadillas or sprinkled into tamales. Owning cattle, however, is not only about milk or meat, it's the status. A man with cows is respected, for he has more than daily sustenance. He has assets that can be sold, traded, or lent. Cattle can be marched to markets, their hides destined for leather, their meat sold by weight. Their very presence is a signal of prosperity. In lean years, a cow may be sold to pay debts or secure a marriage dowry. Its departure mourned but necessary. The work ties cattle even more closely to farms. Oxen, which are castrated bulls trained for labor, pull wooden plows across fields, their broad shoulders straining against yokes carved by hand. The scrape of metal through soil is slow and steady, each furrow cut deep by the oxen's incredible strength. These animals move not with speed, but with endless endurance, their breath huffing clouds in the cool mornings, their eyes calm even as the whip cracks lightly to guide them in the direction they have to go. For farmers who can't afford machines, oxens are irreplaceable. Cattle hold its place in celebration, too. During fiestas, a fattened steer might be slaughtered, its meat roasted for hours until tender, served in great steaming platters with salsa and tortillas to crowds who dance and sing. And of course, in Charedia, cattle are central, their strength tested in contests of rope and horsemanship that echo both Spanish traditions and local pride. Boys watch closely at the sidelines, dreaming of the day they too will ride or rope, their first lessons learned on the very calves they help herd at home. Folklore, as always, weaves through this presence. In some regions, it's said the devil himself can appear as a black bull with fiery eyes, wandering near rivers at night to tempt or frighten travelers. Other tales speak of ghostly cattle herds heard moving through valleys long emptied of livestock, the echoes of past fortunes lingering. Such stories remind villagers that cattle are symbols of not just wealth, but the temptation of the danger of wealth. Practical care is constant. Flies swarm in the heat, and farmers swat them away with leafy branches. Hooves need watching. A lame cow cannot work or walk to market. Corrals must be reinforced because a panicked cow can splinter fences with ease. Children help with the small tasks of the cattle, filling troughs, carrying salt blocks, driving cattle from field to corral. Their pride shows when trusted with these duties, for tending cattle is a sign of growing responsibility. The presence of cattle shapes the landscape itself. Paths are widened into trails by their steady hooves, wells are dug deeper to supply their thirst, and fields are rotated not only for crops, but to provide grazing space. Even their dung has value, dried, collected, and burned as fuel for fires when wood runs scarce. At dusk, the cattle are brought back, their shadows long against the fading light. Dust rises from their hooves, coating the air with a dry, earthy haze. Farmers lean against fences, counting heads, running hands along hides to check for injuries. The cows settle slowly, chewing cud, swishing tails against insects, their bodies radiating warmth into the cooling night. The cattle embody the farmer's larger relationship with life itself, demanding, unpredictable, but capable of sustaining entire families when cared for with vigilance. To own them is to shoulder responsibility as heavy as the animals themselves. At the edges of courtyards, where scraps gather and shadows linger, pigs root noisily, their snouts pressed into earth as though every grain of dirt hides treasure. To Mexican farmers, pigs are both humble and precious, not as proudly displayed as cattle, nor as daily in their gifts as goats or chickens, but invaluable for what they provide when the time comes. They're animals of thrift, eating what others discard and turning it into meat that sustains families through festivals, lean seasons, and long winters. Their care begins by being tethered to posts or being left to wander in closed yards. They feed on maize husks, kitchen peelings, and even the water left after washing beans. Children are often tasked with tossing scraps, squealing with laughter when pigs jostle one another, grunting and snorting in impatient chorus. The animals are messy, yes, but their appetite is a service. Nothing ends up wasted with pigs on the farm. The significance of pigs emerges most clearly in celebrations. When a wedding is announced or a saint's feast approaches, a pig is chosen, fattened for months with special care, its future known but unspoken. The day of slaughter becomes a communal event, neighbors gathering early with knives, buckets, and fires prepared. Women stand ready with garlic, oregano, and chili, while men handle the heavier work. The air fills with sharp scents, raw meat, smoke, and spices. And though somber in its necessity, the act also carries joy. Every part of the pig is used. Meat is roasted, stewed, or ground for tamales. Lard is rendered for tortillas and frying. Intestines are cleaned and stuffed for sausages. Even bones become broth, simmered until they're rich. Dishes made from pigs are at the heart of communal eating. carnitas cooked slowly in great copper pots of their own fat, sizzle and bubble until the meat is tender enough to fall apart, served in steaming tacos with bright cilantro and onion. Chicharron snaps with each bite, its salty crunch beloved as both food and symbol of abundance. In some regions, they also prepare pozole rojo, which is hominy simmered with pork and red chili. Then the bowls are carried steaming into courtyards where families sit together on low stools to share them. Pigs also surface in folk belief. Their nighttime squeals are sometimes said to herald unrest in the spirit world, a warning that witches or restless souls roam near. Some elders tell children that if a pig stares too long at a person, it's because it sees something invisible, a sickness approaching, or a misfortune waiting. These tales are not meant to vilify the pig, but mark it as sensitive, a creature with one foot in the mundane and one in the unseen. Practicality governs much of their place in the farm as well. Pigs reproduce quickly, and a single sow can secure a family's meat for months, her piglets raised and traded in markets. In smaller villages, piglets are often given as gifts or dowry items, their future promise of sustenance woven into the bonds of kinship. For poorer households, raising even one pig can mean the difference between scarcity and feasting. The sound of pigs, guttural and constant, becomes part of the household's backdrop. Their grunts blend with the barking of dogs and the chatter of hens, creating a soundtrack of survival that farmers scarcely notice until it stops. At night, pigs shuffle in their pens, their bodies warm against one another, with a strong smell but a familiar one too. It's earthy, equal parts mud, hay, and musk, a scent that lingers on the clothes of those who tend them. Farmers may wrinkle their noses, but they'll smile too. Markets highlight their worth. Farmers walk piglets to town, their squeals echoing down dirt roads, and the animals tug at ropes or resist stubbornly until scooped into arms. Once there, they're sold or traded, sometimes for money, and oftentimes for maize, tools, or cloth. A sturdy piglet is as good as currency itself, and buyers inspect them with care, weighing their potential for fattening. In quieter ways, pigs also symbolize patience. A farmer feeding scraps day after day may feel it is endless. But when the pig's finally ready, the reward is so substantial. The pig teaches endurance and delayed gratification. A farmer may smile at his children, knowing that the pig that feeds him now will feed his children for the next 3 years. At dusk, pigs settle into their enclosures, snouts rooting into hay as the sky darkens. Their bodies huddle together, and their noisy chorus of grunts fades into softer tones. The household quiets too, dogs stretching near the doors, chickens roosting, and goats are tied against fence posts. Farmers at this time now lean against their fences, listening to their animals. The pigs breathe heavily, their sound oddly reassuring, as if to say that tomorrow's meals are already sleeping within the yard. The burro waits with a patience that only long familiarity with human routine can shape. Tied beneath a mesquite tree, ears flicking at flies, it stamps a hoof now and then, but of course never complains. For Mexican farmers, the burro is necessity. It's the quiet backbone of labor that stretches from their field to the market. While cattle display wealth and goats provide daily milk, the burro carries the weight of both their survival and the life of their community. At dawn, a farmer approaches with rope and a wooden saddle worn smooth from years of use. He pats the burro's neck as if greeting an old friend, then sets about loading it. The smell of sweat, leather straps, and dusty hair fills the air as sacks of maize are lifted onto its sides. The burro shifts once, sighs, then accepts the load. This quiet acceptance is deceptive, however, because every farmer knows the truth. The burro moves when it wants to. Push it too hard, and it plants its hooves, refusing any command. A burro will not push itself to exhaustion. It knows when to stop, which is why it can walk longer and carry more than horses in these lands. Children grow up alongside burros, tucking at ropes too heavy for their hands, learning how to coax rather than command. They discover that a handful of fresh alfalfa persuades much better than a whip, and that talking softly while adjusting the saddle calms the animal much more than shouting. The burro's tasks are many. It carries sacks of maize and beans from field to storeroom, hauls firewood gathered in the hills and ferries clay jugs of water from wells and streams. On market days, it's loaded with baskets of cheese, egg, and vegetables, plodding steadily along dusty roads under the hot sun. Farmers often walk beside it, hands on the rein not to lead but to accompany. Because burros are not just tools but companions, farmers speak to them, scolding, cajoling, sometimes praising, as though the animal understands every word. And perhaps it does, for burros are observant, their ears twitching at the slightest sound, their eyes following movements with quiet intelligence. Farmers often remark dryly that a burro may not speak, but it never forgets. Mistreat it once, and you will be paid back with refusal at the worst possible time. Burros also appear in corridos, folk songs that celebrate rural life, and in proverbs that describe endurance and humility. Mas terco que un burro, more stubborn than a donkey, might be said of a neighbor, yet there's admiration beneath the jesting, for stubbornness in the face of hardship is also survival. In festivals, burros are sometimes dressed with ribbons and flowers, paraded in mimicry of wealthier processions with horses, a playful acknowledgement of the animal's humble but central role. Trails are carved into hillsides, and they're widened by their hooves. Paths from fields to market are beaten firm by the endless journeys. Their dung, left behind, fertilizes the soil, and in regions where vehicles can't pass, burros remain the only transport. Even in towns where trucks do arrive, many families keep burros, trusting them over machines that require fuel and repairs. When a family walks to a cemetery for Day of the Dead, they can't afford their vehicle to break down, and so they take the burros to carry baskets of foods, flowers, and candles, their steady pace matching the solemn rhythm of a procession. In some villages, old tales tell of spectral burros seen at crossroads, said to be cursed souls wandering until released by prayer. Despite these shadows, affection for the burro is clear. Farmers smile when their animal brays loudly, a sound that rattles corrals and startles hens. They chuckle when a burro refuses to move for a stranger, but follows its master without hesitation. Children climb its back, gripping the coarse mane, laughing as it lumbers patiently around the courtyard. By evening, after carrying in firewood, the burro is released from its load, rope untied, saddle lifted, and the sweat-stained cloth laid aside. It rolls in the dust with obvious pleasure, shaking off insects, then wanders to a trough where children pour water from clay jugs. The smell of damp earth rises into the air as its muzzle dips, and when it lifts its head, droplets shine against its whiskers in the fading light. At the threshold of nearly every farm, a dog lies stretched across the packed earth, nose resting on its paws but ears twitching at every sound. To Mexican farmers, dogs are not luxuries or pets in the way city dwellers imagine them. They're guardians, companions, and sometimes warners of things unseen. Their presence at the gate is as essential as the fence itself. By day, dogs trot beside their masters into the fields, weaving in and out of rows of maize, snapping at insects, or chasing after birds that threaten to strip the corn. Children whistle to them, tossing sticks that are only sometimes returned, for dogs here are not bred for games, but for purpose. Still, companionship of course emerges naturally, as it would with dogs. A boy walking goats up a hillside would rest against a stone and find his dog sprawled beside him, tongue lolling and eyes half closed. The bond is simple and wordless, but it's built on countless shared mornings. Their truest work begins at night. When dust thickens and shadows lengthen, the dogs circle corrals, noses to the ground, marking their presence and checking for the presence of others. They bark at passing coyotes, their voices sharp and unrelenting, sometimes gathering in chorus with neighbors' dogs until the hills echo with canine alarm. This barking may frustrate weary farmers, but they know it's a warning, not meant to be a nuisance. A dog that falls silent is more dangerous than one that keeps the village awake. Dogs protect not only animals but thresholds. Many are tethered near doors, their chains long enough to patrol the entry, but short enough to prevent wandering. Their scent and sound create a boundary that strangers hesitate to cross, and farmers trust them with instinctive confidence. If the dog growls low and steady at a figure in the distance, The family doesn't wait to ask questions before they retreat indoors or reach for their machetes. Despite all this utility, dogs are of course the greatest target of affection in these farms. Farmers feed them scraps, bones from a stew, or tortillas gone a little stale, or fat trimmed from the pork. And though the fare is humble, the dogs are happy and they thrive. Children slip them extra morsels, whispering secrets into their ears as though the animals understand. And perhaps they do, for dogs respond with thumping tails and steady eyes. Some are even given names that carry irony. Fiero for a pup too timid to bark, or Sombra for one that disappears into shadows when it should be standing guard. Folklore elevates their role further. In many Mexican traditions, dogs are believed to be spiritual guides. The ancient Mexica and other indigenous peoples spoke of dogs guiding souls across rivers in the afterlife. This belief lingers subtly in rural households, where dogs are treated with a respect that goes beyond their daily duties. Elders sometimes say that a loyal dog will wait for its master beyond death, ready to lead them safely on the journey. It's why mistreatment of dogs is frowned upon by even the harshest farmers. Harming a dog might mean losing your guide in the next world. But there are darker beliefs as well. Stories warn of the Cadeo, a spectral dog that appears at crossroads, a white one to protect people, and a black one to lead them astray. Children are told to avoid following strange dogs at night, for not every wagging tail belongs to a friend. But in daily practical life, dogs are not just loved but often trained for specific purposes. Some are trained to drive animals, to round up goats or nudge pigs back to their pens. But even those untrained instinctively guard. A farmer might say that he sleeps soundly because the dog hears twice for him. Even in markets and towns, dogs walk alongside their owners, patient and steady, guarding baskets of cheese or bundles of firewood. They wait faithfully outside shops or churches, curled in the shade and tails wagging when their master emerges. Their loyalty is quiet but unshakable. At dusk, when families gather for supper, the dogs remain near the gates, ears pricked and shadows stretched long. After a full week of looking through their animals, taking charge of them, taking them to the market and fearing for their lives, but then knowing that it rewards their patience and their resilience, they end the day with their families and with their dogs. The dogs are not pampered or coddled, but they are indispensable and they are loved. Their loyalty can't be bought and it can't be found anywhere else. For farmers, dogs are the guardians of life itself, protectors of flesh and spirit. And when a dog lies stretched across the threshold at night, the household can rest. Its presence is assurance that the world outside may offer threats, but the family will stay safe inside.